to Raising Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Amber Bardon, and I am really excited about today's episode. I have been teeing up this episode. Everyone I've been talking to, I've been telling them about the solution that we're going to talk about today and letting them know you were coming on our podcast. And so I think we'll have a lot of people who have been waiting for this episode, and let's dive into it. So today I have two guests. One of our clients is on the podcast today, Miranda Troyer. She is the Director of Personal Care at United Zion. And for non-Pennsylvania people, personal care is associated with assisted living. I know in other states it's called different things. And our second guest is Sandro Cilurzo, who is the founder and CEO of Helpany, which is a falls management platform. And I will let him give you more information about that platform. Welcome to the show.
Hi,
Hi, Amber. Thank you for having us.
Yes.
All right, Sandro, let's just get started and tell us what Helpany is.
So Helpany is a privacy-preserving fall prevention solution, literally tailor-made for senior living communities, serving the full continuum of care, from independent living up to memory care. And it's a radar-based technology. I have the device with me here, and we will talk about it anyway in much more depth. But this is Paul, which is literally at the center stage, our invention, which is this privacy-preserving technology, which has an ability to let's say, empower communities to be as proactive as possible in their fall prevention approach, like spotting residents which have an elevated risk of falling, triage staff members to be with the right resident in the right moment in time, and through that, they see a significant reduction in their monthly fall rate.
So there is so much falls technology out here on the market. I feel like it's kind of the Wild West of senior living tech with falls. So what was your inspiration to come up with this product? Like, tell me a little bit about your story about how you came up with Helpany and how did you get involved in senior living?
Yeah, with pleasure. And number one, probably the listeners can hear it. I have a really strong accent. I'm not out of the States. I'm based myself in Phoenix, but I'm out of Switzerland. So I founded Helpany in Switzerland because I was working as a cybersecurity officer in a big healthcare facility. And 9 years ago, my colleagues back then, the chief medical officer, director of nursing, they have tasked me to find a fall prevention solution for my colleagues on the floor. Because of course, in Switzerland, the same issue is like the falls has been the number one topic in those monthly meetings. And after 1 year in trialing out all the existing systems 9 years ago, and nothing was meeting expectations for different reasons, we literally had not either the clinical results, and more importantly, the majority of solutions have been focused so far on reacting. Like reactive in nature. Everything was centered about reacting, but not about being proactive. And secondly, the privacy and dignity aspect has been a huge issue because from a clinical standpoint, specifically when we think about personal care, where Miranda can give much more details to it, but it's our home. It's an apartment where we live. It's not a temporary situation like in a hospital in an acute environment where we just for 7 days. So it has been clear that we need to have a privacy preserving technology which doesn't have a camera, doesn't have a lens, like nothing watching me, because this is a huge part of the experience for these residents that they feel it's still a home, because who wants to have a camera in their own bedroom? And this led then to the creation after 1 year of trialing out existing system. I was like, you know what? I would build this completely different myself. And then I founded the company May 2019 in Switzerland. So we were operating quite a while, and we're serving then Swiss clients first. And it was always my vision to come to the US. And then end of 2023, I was then literally in the transitioning from moving from Switzerland to the US, was back then in San Francisco. And then a Phoenix-based community, a CCRC, heard about us. They heard about this privacy-preserving fall prevention solution because they were literally searching something which focused on prevention, like on being proactive and not reacting. And this is then how I ended up for the first time in Phoenix, January 2024. They had a huge success with that approach, published a case study, and I didn't spend a single day in San Francisco. So I moved to Phoenix. Now Phoenix is my home. So October 2024, I moved to Phoenix because it started to spread like word of mouth recommendations between communities to communities. And this is as well how I met Miranda and United Zion. So we got recommended to them through other communities which were having success.
Awesome. I love to hear the founder stories about how people got into senior living. I've been in senior living for 20 years, so it's always interesting to learn how other people come to the industry. So Miranda, tell us about the personal care program at United Zion and what were the drivers that pushed you to look for a solution like Helpany?
Sure. I mean, obviously, the forefront of everything that we do in healthcare and particularly senior living is safety. We were always looking at safety as our number one priority and their well-being. So we kind of started to look at different tech options and different companies that were available. And what we really liked about Helpany is the fact that there is a lot more privacy to it. When you're starting to introduce new tech to this kind of generation, it's met with a lot of opposition typically. They don't want to be watched. They don't want to feel like they're being so closely monitored, and they have some still feel of independence. So that was one of the drivers for us to opt with Helpany, because it doesn't have those cameras and microphones, and it the way the system is kind of created really protects their privacy the most. And we were finding that, like anywhere in healthcare, falls are a concern in our hospital send outs and even hospitalizations, and then ultimately transitions were seeming to happen much quicker and more frequent. So looking at ways to be more proactive versus reactive was huge for us.
Since you have it rolled out in personal care, are you planning to look at other levels of care? Since I know United Zion has all three levels of care, tell me a little bit about the decision to start with personal care.
I think our personal care is on the smaller scale. So I think it was a nice toe into this kind of change and adding more tech into our daily schedules. So it was nice to start small versus our residential and our healthcare populations are a little larger than we are. So just to see how we liked it, what the residents, staff, families, how everybody kind of felt about it before we rolled out on a giant scale or campus wide. I do believe we have intentions on expanding this to both residential living and healthcare. I'm not sure where we're at this exact moment with it, but I do know that we've been talking pretty regularly about the system and how we're liking it and how it's really already benefiting us.
Okay, yeah, I'll be interested to hear how you're able to expand the program. I think when we think about falls technology, we have to be really specific about the use case and the level of care and then the type of technology behind it. And so, Sandro, tell me a little bit more about the radar component because I know other falls technology uses like Miranda mentioned, cameras or sensors or AI. So tell me about the back end tech for the radar monitoring and then what is the level of care use case?
Yes, sure. So I think most importantly, the fundamental part, the radar technology is a tailor-made radar by us. So literally it has every single piece is tailor-made for that specific use case from senior living for senior living. But the real difference is the main field of expertise of Helpany is the artificial intelligence part. This is like literally the background of the founders. This is where we're coming from. And Paul leverages literally a really sophisticated way of understanding human motion patterns. Like over time, because again, in Switzerland, before we came to the US, we served already thousands of residents. So this Paul device has been used in many residential environments for a long time. And you can imagine that over time, our system had literally the exposure to a huge variety of different individuals. And the artificial intelligence is by now powered by more than 6 billion motion measurements. And this is where the really uniqueness stays in, because what Paul does is he understands those motion patterns of individuals, literally gait, posture, stability of walking, stride length. How is the person transitioning from a standing position into a seated position? How do I rest at night? Quality of sleep aspects, like more frequent tossing and turning, restless leg syndrome, more frequent bathroom visits. It's literally the entirety of these motion patterns, which are considered by Paul. And we have the ability to spot if a resident has an elevated risk of falling before they fell. So that's what I see as one of the huge differences is literally the challenges for each organization, who needs our attention. That's the real problem. I mean, we have some individuals where we know they have a high risk of falling because they have a fall history. But my director of nursing 9 years ago, she was like, the real challenge is how do I figure out the ones which I don't know, like the chicken egg problem, because there's a life before a fall and life after a fall. And the best way as a mitigation strategy is that we have a way to spot the ones we don't know. And so Paul can be seen as a virtual caregiver assistant. Like literally, that's the artificial intelligence behind the scenes, which makes a difference in spotting residents which have an elevated risk. And then what Paul will do is he automatically selects those high-risk individuals on any given day and enables what we call preventive alarm just for those individuals, because there is no value to alert for everyone, because alert fatigue is a huge challenge in each organization. And what Paul makes unique is that he's able to incorporate staffing level automatically, because he not only understands motion pattern of the residents, he understands the entirety of the motion patterns in the room, including staffing, providing services. So he selects high-risk individuals, enables preventive alarms automatically, and then Miranda staff member gets preventive alarms on their phone for specific circumstances that they can be with the right resident in the right moment in time. And all of that is literally only possible because of this proprietary artificial intelligence, which we evolved over time as a company before we came to the US. And now it's literally scaling along the full continuum of care. Yes, we started in personal care. We always start in personal care, AL. All our clients do, because it makes a lot of sense to start there. Why? Because you experience everything there is to experience from Helpany. You see every single part, because in personal care, I would say the distribution of acuity levels is really interesting. You have some people which are extremely independent still, and some which are on the edge for higher needs. And this is where Paul can provide the biggest aha moment and wow effect, because there have been people which have not been known. And I think Miranda can tell there more why Paul was able to help there in a unique way to spot individuals which were unknown to them, that they have some challenges. And that's why we say personal care is a good start, but it's used in independent living and memory care as well, which is really unique because of the privacy aspect.
For the independent living, do you have the devices out in the common areas so it's throughout the whole building, or how are you tracking people who are, going to be everywhere?
Yes, great question. So short answer, absolutely. So we actually had right now a rollout where 330 apartments have been equipped, like the full continuum. So 220 IL residents receive Paul in their apartment, living room, bedroom. Yes, there has been like a selection of common areas as well for strategic like areas of interest, let's put it like this. And this is one part of the population health management approach for these communities, like that they have an ability to know who is thriving in independent living, who is thriving in assisted living, and who is thriving in memory care in their environment. And it's about making the triaging between the level of care as proactive as possible. That's why it's used in independent living as well.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting use case for all falls technology. I go out to a lot of communities and I try to meet with residents as much as possible. And I always ask residents about this kind of technology, how they feel about it and think about it. And whenever I ask the question, they're always a little bit quiet at first. And then someone will tell a story about someone who fell, usually an independent, and no one knew for a couple of hours. And so, now they're viewing this type of technology as much more favorable. So, I mean, Miranda, what was the reception of the residents at United Zion to this tech? Did you involve them in the selection process? Tell me what their attitude and how they felt about it.
So once we decided to go ahead and do the install and really roll it out for our personal care, everybody, we kind of all met together at resident council. We discussed what it is, roughly how it works. We're in a very conservative area in Lancaster County, and the tech is just not there. A lot of them just still really don't understand a lot of tech stuff. The AI is, you mention AI and everyone gets a little on edge. So that was kind of another reason in rolling this one out, is it was a nice kind of lead into AI and tech. And so we kept information to a minimal as far as kind of what it does, but fully explaining, this is to benefit them and reduce falls and kind of assist staff when we can't be in the rooms with them. And a lot of them were open to it. We had follow-up meetings after. One of the features that Helpany has is a health is wealth report that the residents can get weekly, and it kind of tracks almost like your health app on your cell phone. It gives them kind of scores, where they're at currently, and then there's tips and encouraging things to kind of increase their scores so they can take a little bit more charge of their own health care. That one has been kind of a mixed bag. I would say more people liked getting that report than not. I think it was a little eye-opening for some residents, kind of where they were falling in those categories. But overall, they've liked it. They haven't been too upset by it.
Did you
Most
make
of
it
them.
mandatory for everybody in assisted living?
We do. We have it installed in every room. It's turned on from admission, and then they're informed about it during the whole admission process. So from the time of even touring personal care, since installation, I've been informing families as well as the residents about what this is and what it does, what it looks like, and families are thrilled. Families are so excited to know that there's just an additional level of safety that they haven't had. We were really running into families asking if they could bring in their own cameras to install in rooms, and it gets a little tricky with that, with regulatory guidelines and things of that nature, because then that would be recording, everyone in the room, visitors and things like that. So this was just a wonderful option. People that had asked about installing cameras actually were like, oh no, having this will be perfect. This is all we need. And then they have the ability to download an app and be able to check up on their loved one as well throughout the day, weekly, however often they would like to.
Sandro, I know you mentioned alert fatigue earlier, and that's one of the reasons I hear people say they don't want to do false technology or it's a barrier, is because it's just another system to manage. What happens if you miss something? So, Miranda, I'm curious, how did you change your operational procedures to incorporate Helpany, and talk us through the staff reception to that and how has that been part of your daily workflows?
So, I mean, it really is not much different from them pressing their call pendant. We've had multiple training sessions with this team because we do have some folks that are not as tech savvy. So they were really struggling to understand how it can see what it sees, how it can generate what it does. So, and Sandro and his team has been amazing with getting us information and educational tools to kind of just help answer some of those questions a little bit better. So that's been great. But really, I mean, it's done is cause more purposeful rounding. I mean, typically on our night shifts prior, you're doing 2-hour room checks, you're checking on people throughout the night. We're waking people up as we're checking on them, no matter how cautious we were being, which was causing disrupt in sleep. So this is now telling us, hey, these folks are up and moving, they may need assistance. So it's giving us a preemptive nudge to go and check on them and go help them versus, just checking on folks that maybe don't necessarily need it because they're asleep. So being able to do that has been great. And even just the flagging of folks that the system is saying, hey, these folks maybe need a little extra attention, keep a closer eye on them, has been really beneficial for the staff and for me to be able to assess their plan of care and how much help they're requiring or needing, and also get other interventions in place like physical therapy, speaking with doctors about pain medications. And this system has already benefited us in multiple ways across that end. So it's been pretty good, and it's very user friendly. That's one of the big things that I love about it. I am not the most tech person either. So even from the management interface, the back end of things that you can see, it's so user friendly.
No, that's good to hear. Sandro, this next question is for you. With Helpany being deployed in more communities and starting to have these devices in a lot of different areas, in the rooms, in the common areas, in a lot of different use cases, I'm curious, do you see the technology being able to do more than falls management? And are you able to share potentially some of those ideas or things coming with Helpany?
Yeah, with pleasure. So it already does right now much more, which has not been discussed that much at the moment in this podcast so far, but more than happy to share. So by end of last year, we announced for all the existing Helpany communities which have installed pole at their ceilings, so just be really clear that just have pole at their ceiling, nothing else, and that we have launched a full-baked emergency call system, ePole, the dependent system, which is baked in and ready to use. So when you install the pole devices at the ceiling, you get a full-fledged emergency pendant system ready to use as part of the offering. And this has been one big initiative last year, because we received many requests from the existing Helpany communities. Hey, we would really appreciate if there would be like a way of having a really modern wireless emergency call system because you have Paul in the apartment. And we were like, we are working on that anyway. And then we launched that to provide more value with the same device because you only need Paul at the ceiling and then you are ready to go to use this emergency call system as an extra value add. And down the line this year, we have multiple parts which will be announced and provided to these clients. So really important. Our philosophy is pretty straightforward. You install Paul once, and all the values through the software, and we update them all the time and add additional software-based modules for them, like for benchmarking, additional reports, additional parts in the system, like in the direction of resident engagement. That's a big part this year for IL specifically. Like we literally added with different communities at the moment and rolling this out, that this ePole, that pendant which I showed you before, can do much more for engagement purposes, like understanding residents' attendance tracking when I go to events, like when I go to the bingo or chaplain service, because this is not a regular pendant. And this is, for example, for 2026, one additional part to provide this ecosystem. That's how we should see. Helpany provides an ecosystem with a lot of future-proof aspects for these communities. And it's literally addressing different parts of that. And of course, on the triaging side with staff members, I think this has been extremely impactful, like to celebrate high performers, if this makes sense, that you can celebrate your people which maybe don't get the recognition on the floor, because Paul brings transparency into that as well. And I think this has been really crucial for us to highlight that Paul is not preventing the fall. He's empowering the caregivers and the staff members to be proactive. Paul is just a virtual caregiver assistant. That's it. And that's how it should be. It's just a tool to elevate those caregivers with information. And this is our primary focus, to provide as much actionable information as possible for the people on the floor.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's so interesting to think about what the future of senior living communities is going to look like as we just are able to do so much more with these systems. And to your point, Miranda, with the families loving this, one of the things I always ask sales and marketing teams is if they're talking about this type of tech with prospects as a competitive edge, to say if you live here, you will be able to take advantage of this technology, and your family members will be more, potentially impact longevity, healthy aging, aging in place, that kind of thing. One of the other barriers that I feel like I hear with implementing technology like this is cost. So, Miranda, I'm curious, have you been able to determine any cost savings or anything along those lines for an ROI on putting in this type of system?
Most of the billing went through our finance team, so I did see some things, but in comparison to a lot of the other companies that are out there, Helpany was very affordable. And given everything that they're driving to do and already offer, since we kind of made the decision to go with them, they're growing faster than some of these other companies are in services offered, I'll say. And I am always looking towards the future as we're looking into elder care. The demographics are changing all the time. The acuity level of residents moving into these facilities is changing all the time. So being able to go with a system that is going to be able to grow and shift as the climate is for our residents is huge for us. But from a financial end, we found it very affordable. There really wasn't too much cost concern there for us.
Yeah, I was curious if you're tracking anything like how many falls you've prevented
Yes.
and what the cost of that is. If you put any metrics in place like that, or Sandro, if you have any recommendations around things like that.
Yes, I just wanted to add there. There will be a case study soon announced and released together with United Science. So yes, they tracked it really closely, and I only can tell at the moment without too much spoiler alerts that the results have been really impressive. And there will be a case study which exactly covers the part of the fall reduction, the impact from a financial standpoint, and the positive ROI. And this is literally how we grow, primarily based on these numbers, which these community are able to measure. We are really numbers driven. Probably it's as well part because I'm an engineer by training. I like numbers to have perspective, to see the impact and quantify them. And there will be a case study from United Sign, which will be announced really soon. So we just talked about this yesterday, that this is soon coming.
Okay, great.
And our fall reduction has been pretty significant. In January, as we only launched, I believe it was the second or third week in January, with having them go live in the rooms. So we had upwards of like 12, I think 13 falls in January. Primarily, a little over half of those were on night shift specifically. And then in February, we had 3, and none of them were on our night shift. And they were all in locations that were outside of their bedroom versus the month prior where they were all in their bedroom. So being able to already, and within less than 2 months, really seeing that kind of change has already been a huge driver. And the other details that the Pulse system can pick up has already alerted us to so much more. And it's been great to see how it works and implement different measures.
Well, we'll look forward to that case study coming out and potentially share that on our resources as well. For both of you, I'll start with Sandro. Is there anything we haven't covered yet that you want to make sure our listeners know before we wrap up?
I think we covered all the parts. I think the most important thing for us, which I can just highlight to all these communities in their evaluation and processes, that I think specifically when privacy preservation and the prevention and proactive nature is a priority, and being able to have one solution to serve the full continuum of care, we always provide trial experiences. That's like how we roll. Like we always want to be the right partner for these communities. So when a listener thinks this could be valuable, they should just reach out to us, and we will be more than happy to accommodate that they can see it in action first before they scale it, because that's like how we serve all our clients, that they have a risk-free decision process.
All right, thank you. And we will include in the show notes how people can find you as well. And Miranda, what lessons learned would you share with our audience, both from the perspective of going into the process of selecting a tool, and then any lessons learned after the implementation?
I wish we could have started this sooner. We had some other things that needed to happen prior to getting on board with Helpany and getting them live in our building, and I just wish we could have started it sooner, because I do feel like there were so many opportunities that, having had this system in place, we could have prevented moves. We could have maybe maintained people living in this level of care for a longer period of time. Hindsight, I guess. But we're really enjoying it, and it is a great system, especially if you're a little nervous about delving into that tech AI field.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for coming on the podcast this morning. It was really interesting for me to learn more about this tool and to hear how it's being actually used at United Zion. And United Zion, of course, is one of our most frequent guests on the podcast, who has been on multiple times. So thank you again for joining us today.
Yes, thank you
for having me. Thank you so much.
You can find us online at raisingtechpodcast.com, where you can see all of our episodes and contact us to provide feedback or submit an episode idea. We are on social media everywhere at Raising Tech Podcast. If you enjoy Raising Tech, please leave us a review and share with a friend. Music is an original production by Tim Riesig, one of our very own Parasol Alliance employees. As always, thank you for listening.